Hey Reddit, when did your something's not right here gut feeling ever save you? I went to hospital with shortness of breath and my heart racing. They did a chest x-ray, blood test for blood clots, ECG, and a few other tests but all came back normal. After observing me overnight everything still looked good. Oxygen saturation was perfect. My heart rate was still a bit elevated but nothing too crazy. And it seemed that it was likely leftover symptoms from a bad virus that I'd had a week or so earlier. The ER doctor asks me how I would feel if they sent me home and I just had a bad feeling about it all. I told him as such and that I had no real basis for it except that I just felt off about it. He said fair enough. Let's try one more test and if that comes back negative then we'll send you up to general medicine and see if they can track something down. That test was a VQ scan that found despite all other tests showing no results for blood clots. I actually had a whole bunch of them in both lungs. I ended up with a diagnosis of unprovoked bilateral pulmonary embolisms and am on blood thinners for life. Super grateful both for the bad feeling and the ER doctor who was willing to listen to it. I was going to meet up with someone from Marketplace to buy a phone and the feeling hit me so I called the woman and a man answered trying to play off the fact he's a man and I passed by where we were meeting at and it was dark and I heard voices in the background on the phone call. I never stopped the car and kept going. Pretty sure I saved myself from at the very least a mugging but learned a good lesson. Always meet in a public place. Forgot one. About 10 years ago, working security at a site about 50 miles from home. Got off shift at midnight and didn't bother to change out of uniform because I was only going to stop for gas. 2 stations in the town I was working in were open after midnight, but it slipped my mind as I drove past the first one, pulled into the other. Same brand, same gas price, same sort of dump entirely, and just didn't like something about it. Nobody else around but he clerk that I could see. But I decided to go back to the other one, topped off and headed back out of town. I get close to that station again. 3 city cop cars, 2 deputies and a state trooper are outside blocking the road with guns drawn. Turns out a city cop walked in on a robbery. Dude put a bullet in his vest, and the store owner knocked the robber out cold with a bat before the cop could recover enough to get his gun out. That would have been me, in a uniform with a nice shiny badge, but no body armor. In 2004, on Boxing Day, not me but my mother, family trip including all cousins and extended family on my dad's side to visit the coastal south of Sri Lanka on vacation. About 20 people in all. Well planned trip. Last moment my mother didn't want to go. No reason at all. None of us could get her to explain why but she refused to go. So we went inland on a different trip to see some other relatives. Around midday, the entire extended family now on both sides were sitting shocked in front of the television watching the very same hotel we booked being washed away live by that tsunami. To date, she still can't explain what she felt. Thanks for the gold and silver guys less than 3. I smelled burning plastic early in the morning at my family cottage and almost went back to sleep. I was around 15, but got up to investigate. A socket on the outside of the building had caught fire and flames were shooting up the wall. The rest of my family was still sleeping and there wasn't enough smoke for the alarms to go off. I ran and got the fire extinguisher, got my dad up, and put it in his hands and pointed him towards the fire. Stopped it and called the fire department. I had a gut feeling I should pull my wallet and phone out of my purse. Not even 20 seconds later, I get mugged. The man dragged me across the sidewalk and stole my purse but all he ended up getting was a juice box and my birth control. My mom dropped my 3-year-old brother off at daycare before she had to work in the morning. When she got to work she had this terrible feeling something was wrong with him. She ended up leaving work and drove to the daycare. She found the daycare lady inside sleeping while the daycare kids, including my brother, were running around the pool. My brother never went back to that daycare again. I was president of a club, and a guy who'd recently joined just set off my alarm bells, but he never did anything wrong. I still couldn't shake the feeling he was off. I asked my best friend, a pretty burly guy, to just keep an eye on him during a conference we went to. Most of the club, minus me, went to a party at the conference. My best friend kept an eye on the weird guy for most of the night, and ended up stopping him from raping a passed out drunk girl. I pretty much always trust my gut feelings now. Edit. It was a model UN. I'm a girl. The conferences were actual conferences, LMAO. Not mine, but my dad's. I was downstairs helping him with some woodworking when I was 10 or 11. He went to run a 2x4 through the table saw when he noticed I was at his elbow rather than behind him. He stopped and told me to never stand behind a board when it's going through the saw in case it gets thrown. I thought he was being overly cautious and I didn't have as good of a view from behind him. But whatever. I got behind him. He flipped on the saw and ran the board through. He only got 1/3 of the way through, though, when the blade hit a knot and flung the 2x4 hard enough to crash against the wall 10 feet behind. If I hadn't moved it would have hit me square in the chest and could have killed me. Not me, but my mother. Saved my grandfather's life when he had a stroke in his chair in their living room. We had all started to walk around the development when my mother, after about 50-75 meters from the house, said, "I am going to go back and check on dad." I went with her, and I nearly witnessed my grandfather die. He was on the chair, conscious, but unable to move or talk, just looking at my mother with bulging eyes. She called 911 once, then twice when she felt that they were running late. Ambulance came, got him on the stretcher, but it was too wide to fit out the door. We ended up tearing the door frame off to get him out, because he was conscious. He actually remembers the ride to the hospital. He told us later that he heard the driver or someone say, "There is not a chance that this guy lives." That was when I was around 5-6 years old. He is still alive to this day, more than a decade later. At my mother's funeral, part of his speech was about how, without my mother's actions, he would not have been able to spend time with her during her final years of life, and for that, he is eternally grateful. We were looking at houses a while back, and found one that was great location, would have been perfect size for us, and didn't appear to need any work other than new carpet, and stuff I wanted to do like painting and switching it over from oil burning furnace. I just had a nagging feeling about it, and my husband agreed. As much as we loved it, something was off with it. I actually thought ghost or something silly like that, and we ended up passing on it. I was still kicking myself about it until a few months later when it had a major electrical fire. The whole house and everything in it was a total loss, and the family that lived there barely got out alive. I was an unpopular kid, and I always wanted to go on sleepovers, but it rarely happened. In 6th or 7th grade I get invited to this girl's house for a birthday party. I am friendly with her but not close. I go to her house and I feel weird right away. Her mom and stepdad were sitting in the living room smoking, but being perfectly friendly, the whole night. I couldn't shake this feeling of oppressiveness, despair, and danger. I spent the evening keeping my guard up and keeping an eye out for the entire family, without any idea why. At night the girl begs me to spend the night, even though it hurt to say no when I could tell she was desperate. I lied and told her my parents wouldn't let me, when they said over the phone they would. A couple of months later, a student told me she had left the school and moved because her stepfather would molest her at night in her bed. I think of her often, and hope she wasn't hurt that night, and hope she's doing better, but I'm glad I got out. My apostrophe key isn't working. Edited to add, no, I didn't understand what was going on. I would have told somebody. I was also being creeped out by her otherwise cute brother, which I just remembered. And there are multiple posts like this. Not a repost, which is very sad. It didn't save me, but saved a friend. A big group of friends and I were walking home from an event in a town we weren't used to. It was night, and hardly anyone was around. Empty streets and all that. We were walking down a sidewalk that had high fences next to it, so when you turned a corner, whatever was around it was out of sight. One of the girls fell behind, distracted by her phone, I think, and I noticed. So I started drifting behind as well to become a sort of midway point between her and the group. Soon, we were nearing where we were staying, and our group rounded a corner, then started making their way into the yard where our living quarters were. I saw a car drive past us, then turned the corner down the street the girl was still on. As soon as I saw it, I suddenly got this suspicious, awful feeling. So I stopped and went back to the corner to keep an eye on the friend. The car drove past her, stopped, did a complete U-turn, and slowly started creeping up behind alongside her. She was still on her phone and wasn't noticing a thing. I stepped out from behind the corner and started walking towards her. The car sped off quickly as soon as the driver saw me. It scares me that someone could have grabbed her and none of us would have seen a thing. It would have just been one of those cliche movie moments where you turn around and realize a member of the group is missing. To compound that potential tragedy, she'd just gotten engaged a few weeks prior. I think the fact that we had worked with some safe houses in the area that discussed human trafficking probably aided in me being on high alert, and the area we were in was known for that sort of thing. I was falling asleep in the car. My friend was driving. All of a sudden he stops talking and I think to myself, WTF? Something's not right. I open my eyes and turn over. Dude was having a seizure. His legs were stiff as duck and his foot was on the gas. We were going downhill towards a busy intersection. We hit the red. So I slammed the car in park and pulled the keys out. Car starts rattling, making a weird noise, but it gained so much momentum it was still rolling down. So I grabbed the steering wheel and veered us off the road into the side of an abandoned building. I opened his door and climbed over him. I was able to get him out and turn him on his side. The police officer that showed up was like, "You couldn't have done this in a safer fashion?" I just said sorry, but inside I was like, "Duck you." I was driving and it started to snow. I noticed that I was going a bit fast and strongly sensed I should slow down. I did, and a couple seconds later I came up around a bend with the road suddenly being covered in ice. I started to fishtail while sliding directly towards two people standing outside their car. They had wrecked in the same manner that I was about to do and were standing outside their car, with me heading straight for them. I quickly thought of my options and ended up doing a hard right straight into the highway barrier. I slid nearly 100+ feet, dragging the front of my car to slow it down. Because I had decided to slow down, I was able to give the two guys enough time to get out of the way before I slammed into their cars. Even though I totaled my car, which was sad, I did not end up killing two people that night. The police did not end up ticketing anyone, thankfully, and they finally sanded the road after we had all wrecked. Lol. Snow while driving still scares me to this day. I had gone to this bar back home with a few friends and afterwards everyone was supposed to go to this house party. I was game to go from the moment I was invited. Halfway through the night I had this gut feeling to not go. I told my best friend that she shouldn't go, but she insisted that she wanted to go because there were a few cute guys there. I couldn't shake the feeling that we shouldn't go, but she talked me into it. When we got in my car to head to the party, the guy feeling was worse. I grew up around cars and driver manual. My best friend is completely clueless when it comes to cars, so I deliberately grinded the gears and jerked the car and made it stall, acting like something was wrong. I pretended to try to fix what wasn't broken, and after about 15-20 minutes of fixing my car, cops and fire trucks followed by EMS flew by us. I fixed my car but told my best friend that I just wasn't feeling well, and she agreed and said my car breaking down ruined her mood. So we went back to my place to watch movies. About an hour after getting home we got a call from a friend of ours saying that the girl who owned the house and who was throwing the party was cheating on her husband, who was deployed and came back and left to surprise her and caught her in bed with his buddy. Dude pulled a gun and started shooting at this girl and his friend while everyone else fled the house. This isn't my story. It's from an old high school teacher of mine. His friends were bar hopping. They were all underage and traveling to a bar about 45 minutes away. It wasn't like this is the first time they were doing this or anything. All of a sudden, he got a really bad feeling and started panicking. His friends made fun of him and wouldn't let him out of the car, but it got so bad they had to dump him in this small town in the middle of nowhere. He used a payphone and called a cab home. The next morning he saw that his friends had been in a car accident, obviously due to drunk driving. Most of the friends died. One survived with a severe brain injury. His life was saved all because of a gut feeling. Sometimes he has survivor's guilt now. I used to never wear my seatbelt. This was before they were annoying as duck if you didn't put it on. One time I was sitting in the passenger seat of a car and had a gut feeling to put it on. Not even a minute later we were hit by someone doing about 60 miles per hour. Cop said if I didn't have on my seatbelt I would have went through the windshield. I always wear my seatbelt now. I was learning violin when I was about 10 from an instructor at my local music shop. I got the weirdest feeling from him even though he didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I wanted to vomit every time I looked at him, especially his hands. After 4 lessons I told my parents that I had a terrible feeling about him and I never wanted to go back. Luckily, they listened and didn't make me ever go to him again. A few years later he was arrested for molesting multiple of his students. I have no idea how I knew something was off. He never did or said anything but I just felt it. Few years back I went to uni in Brussels. I would always take the train to get there. One morning I just woke up and didn't feel great at all. Keep in mind I have had a horrible flare-up of Crohn's for the last weeks. But this felt different. Guess it was my gut. So instead of pushing through it like I did with Crohn's, I decided to stay home for once. This was the only day out of 2 that I ever stayed home from uni. That day the terror attack happened on the train that I usually ride to get to uni. One time when my little sister and I wandered off in Superstore, a strange man was standing behind us in the toy aisle and I was getting super weird vibes about him. Keep in mind I was only around 9-10 and he also looked super shady. He had a big hoodie, dark sunglasses, so you name it. Just screaming serial killer. So obviously my first thought was to just move away from him because we could just look at different toys anyways. Nope. Apparently not. He just kept following us but maintaining a small distance at the same time, and eventually I whispered to my sister that a man was following and we started walking in circles around different aisles to lose him until we found our dad. I remember how he looked at us one last time before walking away. I was scared of strangers for a while after that, even though I was really outgoing as a kid. I was afraid he'd followed us home for some reason. And looking back on it now, he could have been trying to snatch us or something, but maybe he just wanted to help, but I'm pretty sure there was something wrong with him. I had an important meeting in another city. I fly a lot, but I had a nagging feeling about the 3-hour flight I needed to take to get to the meeting. 2 nights in a row before the flight I dreamt that the right engine would flame out, causing the plane to crash. In the morning I dawdled enough that I missed flight CP 414. The plane made it just fine and I got fired. Got a better job 2 weeks later, so my gut feeling saved me. I went out with my best friend on New Year's last year and were having drinks with her friends when I realized I was out of cigarettes. I left for a few minutes to walk over and grab a pack and ended up talking to a homeless guy for a while. And when I went over to the entrance of the bar, she was outside and said something mean to me for no reason and walked off. I was confused, so I decided it would be good if I took a walk to let her cool off and then figure out what she was upset about. I was going to walk down the street for a bit, but something told me to turn left. Walking behind the bar and then turning to the side of the bar when I see a girl laying down on the sidewalk and people walking by her. As I'm walking over to help, I realize it's my friend and she's not very conscious. She was probably drugged while I was getting smokes, and who knows what would have happened if I hadn't decided to go that way. Scares it out of me. I was walking to the barber shop, and for some reason, everything just felt off. I ignored the feeling, but every step I took just made me feel like something wasn't right. So I decided to just go grab some food and come back. While I was eating, I saw police cars and ambulances driving to around where I was before. It turns out there was a murder. Now I always listen to my gut feeling. So, it technically didn't save me. It would have. Anyway, a couple months after my 10th birthday, we went on family vacation to visit my dad's side of the family. They lived a state away. My mom was about 6 months pregnant with my only baby brother at the time. We got to our hotel at about 2 o'clock, and by 3 o'clock we decided we wanted to make the most of the day and go to the aquarium. I got fully dressed and ready to go, and suddenly I was hit with this crippling feeling of dread. At that age I'd never experienced anything like it. Pure anxiety. But I knew. I just ducking knew if we waited 5 minutes I would be fine. I tried telling my mom this and she was having none of it. I even tried to just stall her by begging. Nope. Got dragged, not literally lol, out of the hotel and into the car. We pull out of the parking lot and get T-boned so hard we do a 180 into oncoming traffic. As soon as we all realized we were okay, I was like, yep, there it is. I've never let either of them forget it either, lol. I woke up from a deep sleep at like 2 AM during a winter storm. Something wasn't right. I immediately went looking for my senior dog and couldn't find her anywhere in the house. My roommates had a tendency to let her out for a walk and forget about her. Closing the door, I ran to the front of the house and found her laying on the welcome mat. She was hardly breathing and covered in snow. She had been outside alone for at the very least 5 hours. I moved out shortly after. When I was 18 in my first year of college, I was walking into a convenience store and 2 girls popped out of a car to ask me to buy them cigarettes because they said they were 17, needed to be 18. I said sure, took their money and order, and as I was walking in, a bald 40-something guy wearing a button-down shirt walked out. I immediately was thinking that guy's a cop. I bought for me and the girls, and asked the clerk straight up if that guy was a cop. Clerk confirmed it for me, so I walked out, told the girls to meet me across the street, and walked back to my dorm. Across the street I saw the cop creeping behind a building in his unmarked Crown Victoria, and so I walked right back into my dorm without waiting for a trap. The whole thing was a sting set up outside a dorm to catch college freshmen buying cigs for people a year younger than them. Such a waste of time. The girls were in on it. The clerk knew but had no choice, and because of my hunch and his confirmation, I walked right out of it with 2 free packs of smokes. Not quite sure if it was a gut feeling but kinda close. It was Christmas Eve night in my childhood house. Not a creature was stirring. Not even a mouse. And my mom had gotten a large TV for my dad and hid it in my doorless closet along with some other presents. At one point in the night, she had come back into my room to retrieve one of the smaller items and ended up moving the TV right in front of my wall heater, and didn't put it back. I didn't notice and went to sleep a little later. I don't know if it was the smell or a gut instinct, but thank God I woke up, because that night early the next morning I woke up to find my room filling with smoke and a nice orange glow coming from the back of the TV box. Luckily no large flames had formed yet and I was able to stop it simply by moving the box out of the way, and of course turned off the heater and evacuated the room. The smoke wasn't super bad so the house didn't get too much and my room eventually stopped smelling of it. TLDR, mom almost burned the house down on Christmas but I woke up in time to stop it. Edit. To all asking about the TV, it was fine. But thank you for your concern. There's a very fun road that gets you from Niederndorf to Vach, or back, in Germany. You can go 60 or 70 clicks kph along smooth tight turns and little rolling hills. All around it 4 acres and acres are fields of whatever's in season and no intersections for several kilometers. It's a very fun road to go too fast on. This day, something like wheat was in and it was high. I couldn't see around the corners, but I knew the road well and was staying in my lane. And I was going fast and smiling. About halfway in, I heard a voice in my head as clear as if the speaker was sitting next to me and it said, "You need to slow down." It was startling and I braked immediately. 2 seconds later I come through one of the turns and into the ass end of a combine taking up both lanes and moving slowly. I barely stopped in time. Those extra 2 seconds of brake time saved a Volvo at least. But I'm pretty sure they saved my life too. Edit. Clip clarity. I was with a coworker. He had lied to me about going to a family party of his. But when I showed up, it was just him and I and we went to a bar. I rolled my eyes and just thought I could clench my teeth through it. He knew the owner of the bar and got me alcoholic drinks. I was only 20. I started pouring out the drinks when the dude was shooting pool because I didn't want to be tipsy drunk while dealing with him. That decision honestly saved me. I told him I wanted to go home, but he talked me into taking him home first. So I followed the directions he gave me and I pulled into a hookah bar parking lot instead. He started getting really aggressive and trying to kiss me. I kept pushing him off. I was still trying to be polite but firm and telling him to stop. That's when I noticed the group of guys around my car, talking to my coworker in my car in another language. He then opened my car door, got out, and proceeded to grab me by the hair to try to pull me out of my car. The other guys gathering around. I had a mind to lock my door when I noticed the other guys. I also had put my car in reverse, so when he grabbed my hair I let off the brake and my car started rolling back so he let go of me. It was terrifying. I told our boss the next day and he quit when our boss asked him about it. Edit. I even drove away with my passenger door wide open. I didn't stop to close it until I was several miles away, and even then I was super paranoid. It didn't save me, but I saved someone else. When I was 6, my brother, 8 at the time, and I would go to my grandma's house while our mom worked late some nights. Anyway, one day I was just randomly thinking about fire alarms. I don't know what caused me to think about it, but after I started I couldn't stop. I have ADHD, this super focus thing, so whenever I'm thinking about something as simple as fire alarms it consumes my mind. I asked my grandma and she said she hadn't tested hers in a while. Just for kicks she did, and sure enough the batteries were dead. She replaced the batteries and made sure they worked. The very next morning her house caught on fire while she was asleep. If she didn't hear the fire alarm she would have been trapped in her room on the 2nd story without a phone or any way to contact help. She most likely would have died. I always make sure fire detectors alarms work in my house now. Edit. Batteries. I was walking out of a grocery store when I saw this kid about to cross the road. Something came over me and I yanked him back onto the sidewalk. Not even a second later a truck came flying past. He was probably around 7 or 8ish.